In 1961, JFK was elected as president. What do you remember about that?
Well, I can remember that my parents were quite excited about it because he was so young and he was a Catholic, which didn't make too much sense to me. I was only 6.
Okay. In that year also was the Bay of Pigs. Do you remember a lot about that?
I can remember seeing something on the news about the flyovers and the pictures of the missile launchers.
Mm-hmm. And the Vietnam War started in that year?
Yes. The Vietnam War didn't end until April or May of 1975.
Did you have a part in that war?
Yes, I was in the Marine Corps during the war, but the closest I got was Okinawa, which was about 1,000 miles from Vietnam.
Okay. 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. Do you remember much about him?
I really don't remember a whole lot, but I think I remember hearing the speech on TV, or maybe it was in school.
And what did you think about that?
Well, I was kind of young, but the idea about all men being created equal and having equal rights is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. JFK was assassinated in that year and Lyndon Johnson became president. Did you have any opinions about that?
I can remember my teacher coming in just to cry and saying that the president had been shot, and then a little while later they closed the school and sent us all home.
Okay. In 1964, the Beatles arrived in the United States. Did you have an opinion about that?
Well, I remember my older sisters being all excited about the Beatles and screaming and getting all excited. I remember seeing them on what was the name of that show?
American Bandstand.
No, not American.
Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan.
Okay. In 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated in Harlem, New York. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that for some reason. I do recognize the name Malcolm X.
He was a black rights person.
Civil rights.
Civil rights, yeah. 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated.
I remember that quite well. I was in junior high school when that happened. We had big discussions in class about the prejudice involved in the assassinations.
Okay.
And later on, I actually went, when I was in Memphis, Tennessee, I went to where he was shot.
What did you think about that?
It was pretty heart-wrenching to think that he was just up there talking on a railed patio type thing and somebody shot him.
Mm-hmm. In 1969, Richard Nixon was inaugurated as president. Did you have any opinions about him?
No, that was before my voting time.
Neil Armstrong walked on the moon that year.
I remember that. I was with a friend of mine and his family named Highfield. We were down on Sandy Point on the Penobscot River, and we drove from there back up to Brewer, Maine, and that's when I saw Neil Armstrong step on the moon.
Okay. In 1973 to 1974, the U.S. was affected by the Arab oil embargo when gas prices and heating oil, the prices went really high. Do you remember
that? People didn't go any place at all because the gas prices jumped up so much overnight, just about. There was lines, you couldn't get gas at just any gas station. They kept running out of gas.
Mm-hmm. 1974, Nixon resigned because of the Watergate scandal and Gerald Ford became president. What did you think about that?
Well, he should have resigned. He should have not been involved with the espionage of the Republican House, the Republicans convention or something it was. They were spying on the other political group.
Mm-hmm. In 1976, Jimmy Carter became president. Did you have an opinion about him?
I think that was the first president I remember voting for.
So you voted for him?
I voted for him, yeah, because I thought it would be good to have what seemed to be a small-time peanut farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think he'd be too into the political bigwigs, but I guess he was.
Okay. In 1979, the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident occurred. Did you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I remember watching the news every night to see just how bad it was going to be and if it was going to affect us up here in Maine. And it was bad news. It's still bad news down there.
Mm-hmm. And during that time, did you have anything you want to say about the Vietnam War? Or the Korean War? Anything?
Well, the Korean War was before my time. The Vietnam War was my time, but it was winding down by the time I was in the Marine Corps.
Okay. In 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected as president. Did you have an opinion about him?
In 1980, Reagan. I don't remember if I voted for him or not, but he seemed to be a pretty good president. He was pretty firm with the communists. Mr. Gorbachev, bring down that wall or something, isn't that what he said? Tear down this wall, and he did.
Did you have any opinions about the Cold War before it ended?
All of the games and training that I received while I was in the Marine Corps was based on either a Russian attack or a scenario or a Chinese scenario. So the whole four years I was in, we were training to counteract what the Russians we thought would do if they ever did start another war. But the Cold War was that we could go to war at any time, but we didn't. It was not shots weren't fired, so it was not considered a hot war.
Were you ever afraid that you would have to go into a war?
Oh yeah. We would get packed up and put on helicopters and flown out to ships, and we didn't know if it was real or if it was just a practice until we were out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of, those helicopter rides were fun.
In 1985, awareness of famine in third world countries was increased with the song We Are the World.
Yeah, I remember that.
What did you think when that song came out? Were you shocked by the famine or not surprised?
I don't think I'd heard anything about it really until that song. And then I started seeing or hearing more about it.
Mm-hmm. In 1989, George H.W. Bush was elected and the Berlin Wall fell.
Well, I remember when H.W. was elected, he was not the best choice, I don't think, but being big money oil, I don't think he was in office to look out for the best interests of other people.
Mm-hmm. When the Berlin Wall fell, what did you think about that?
That was great. That was great. That finally they had a wall right down the middle of Berlin. They just divided the city. Mm-hmm. And now I guess you can cross back and forth with your IDs.
Did that affect you personally at all? Like, did it change the economy or society in Maine?
No, I don't think it really had too much of an effect here, but it sure did have a big effect in Europe. Mm-hmm. And then one after another, the communist Russian Empire slowly fell apart, although it's still there.
Mm-hmm. In 1991, the Gulf War began. What did you think about that?
I was kind of worried about that one starting. I don't think we really had a set goal going in, and we stopped before Saddam Hussein was out of office, so we had to go back in a second time.
In 1992, there were Los Angeles riots and the beating of Rodney King. Do you remember much about that?
Yes, I remember watching that on the TV and thinking to myself, I can understand why they're upset about the guy being beaten by the police officers, but why are they taking it out on all the store owners in Los Angeles, where they went wild looting and destroying things. That didn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. And that year Bill Clinton was elected. Did you have any opinion about him?
I didn't care for Mr. Clinton, and I still don't care for him, but he was elected. He brought in the NAFTA, which I thought was a bad idea. Open it up so we get all these cheap imports in here and we don't get anything in exchange, it looks like to me, instead of a free trade agreement. Everybody's sending the cheap stuff to us.
When he made the NAFTA, he also gave China most favored nation status. Did you know about that, or really?
Yeah. You gotta face it, China's a big player in the world now, as big and powerful as they are.
Mm-hmm.
They own a lot of the United States now in U.S. bonds.
Mm-hmm. In 1993, before NAFTA, President Clinton made the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. Did you have an opinion about that?
Well, I guess that's the best he could do at the time. I think now they're trying to repeal it and make it so the gays and homosexuals can serve openly, I guess.
They did. They can.
In 1995, there was the Oklahoma City bombing. Do you remember much about that?
Yes, that was the saddest thing I'd ever seen, to have somebody pull in with a truck and blowing up innocent little children and women just because of where they worked.
Mm-hmm. Did that make you afraid that it would happen again in other places?
It could very well happen in other places. There's quite a few nutcases out there, and pretty much they told us how he did it, with the fertilizer and gasoline in the back of that truck, or propane tanks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made it such a big explosion.
Okay. In that year, O.J. Simpson was acquitted. What did you think about that?
I think that goes to show if you have enough money, you can get away with murder.
Mm-hmm.
Because he apparently did.
In 1999, Clinton was impeached, and there was the Columbine shooting. Did you have an opinion about either of those?
Yeah, I think that Clinton did lie to the people and lie to the government, and I think the impeachment should have gone through all the way.
Yeah.
And what was the other one there?
The Columbine shooting.
Well, that was just plain sad. I don't see how anybody could prevent something like that, since he was able to steal the guns. But I would think somebody would be aware of their kids being depressed that much that you'd be able to intervene, but apparently somebody didn't.
Mm-hmm. Also in 1999 was the Y2K bug. Do you remember what that was?
Yes, they were all worried at work that we'd come in the next day and nothing was going to work. But nothing went bad. I don't think anything happened bad.
Okay. And more recently, in 2001, George W. Bush was inaugurated. Did you have an opinion about him?
Yes, I voted for him thinking he was better than Clinton, but then again he was big money oil man again, just like Daddy, so he was the better of two evils.
So you changed your opinion of him after he'd been in office for a while?
I didn't think he was as good as his father.
Mm-hmm. When 9/11, the attack of the Twin Towers happened, what do you remember about that?
I remember that day. I was taking your mother up to the orthopedic surgeon's office because she had a broken ankle from the horse bucking her off. And we heard, I can't remember if we heard on the radio just as we were going in, or somebody in the office told us that a plane had crashed into one of the towers, and then we heard a little while later another plane had crashed into the other tower, and I knew something was up then. Mm-hmm. You know, two planes hitting two towers No, that was planned.
hmm Also in that year was the invasion of Afghanistan. What did you think about that?
The idea behind why they're going in is good, but I don't think it's a war that can be won. I mean, that region's been at war for centuries and nobody can really conquer it.
2003 was the invasion of Iraq, kind of related to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Do you have a different opinion of that?
That was the second time we went in, and that time we decided we're going to go all the way to Baghdad and try to find Saddam Hussein. And in the end we did, but it seemed like they told us it was just going to be a little skirmish, and once Saddam Hussein was captured that the war would be over, but there's still people dying there now.
Okay, that's all I had.